We're sitting in a suite in the Live Hotel in Philadelphia, PA.
This is Auto Collabs.
If you look over my right shoulder and go about, 2 to 3 miles in that direction, it is the birthplace and hometown of one of my favorite people, the one and only Damon Lester, who grew up in West Philadelphia.
Naturally.
Of course he did.
And when you hear, if you are any grown adult and you hear the words West Philadelphia,
you have to say it with that cadence. Not West Philadelphia, it's West Philadelphia.
Because
Do they have that in Canada?
West Philadelphia?
No. Do you know what West Philadelphia implies?
Like
Yeah.
Will Smith.
Okay, okay.
The Roots, like all that. Yeah.
his son changed his name to be like.
Yeah, do you not know this?
Who, Damon's son?
No, my son. We just introduced my son on Hulu to the Fresh Prince, and he's so taken by it. Thanks.
I'm like talking to your microphone, Michael.
He's so taken by it that he's changed his contact in my phone to say the Fresh Prince Jr.
Really?
Yes, so we do know West Philadelphia.
Born and raised.
Oh, everybody
Come
can do
on
it.
now.
Hey, look, if you ever get stuck at a party and someone shoves a mic in your face, whatever beat's going down, whatever song's playing, just recite the West Philadelphia Born and Raised. We're going to get Damon to do that on stage sometime soon. If you don't know Damon Lester, he came into the auto industry by way of being an accountant.
Naturally.
West Philadelphia has a good history and pedigree of high-level accountants, and Damon is just one of them. Came in to be an accountant with NAMAD, or their CPA, and then before you know it, he's the president of NAMAD, and now he's an actual dealer.
It's unbelievable. And when I think, the word troublemaker has been around the automotive State of the Union, the community.
A couple times.
When I think of a troublemaker, so out and out trouble, because even just in the last couple months, when I'm on the phone with him, Zoom call, or we're just texting or a call, there's always a question that comes out of his mouth that could literally silence a whole room.
Right in your tracks.
Right? It stops you right in your tracks, or it could silence a whole room of dealers, industry partners, OEMs, anything like that, because he's thinking about the impact of every decision across the industry and how it pertains to dealers and customers. And that type of thought process is troublemaking. It is innovative. It is pushing the boundaries. He comes hard. He doesn't mess around.
He balances this interesting place where he's still the president of NAMAD, and he represents hundreds of dealers. He spends time on Capitol Hill. He understands the political side.
Right.
He understands the dirt and the grind side because he is a dealer now. And, he fell in love with the industry and decided, I want to be a dealer. And when you talk to him, and I know this is going to come out in the interview, his vision for what automotive could and should be is far beyond so many that we've seen and we've talked to. So we're excited. If you haven't met him before, you get to jam with our boy from West Philadelphia.
Born
And raised. Damon Lester.
All right, we are hanging out with my man Damon Lester today, the president of NAMAD and recent owner, just over a year, of Nissan of Bowie, and I got my shorter sidekick, Michael Cirillo, hanging out here. If you can't see him, he might look as tall as me on video, but he's really not. So that's okay.
I'm up
Damon,
to at least your belly button.
Yeah, right. Damon, welcome, man. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Kyle. Pleasure, Michael. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Damon. So, I first found out about who you are back when Paul had you on at Digital Dealer. And it was the very first time that I think the general public had found out that you had bought into a dealership. So your history, right, is kind of coming from being a CPA with NAMAD and then growing into the president role of that. So you've been in automotive for how long now?
21 years now.
Yeah.
21
awesome.
years. Yeah.
That's awesome. And your story kind of led to this, wanting to be at the dealership level. So what was kind of like the trajectory that led you to want to be, hands in the dirt in a dealership and come out from the NAMAD side and move into the dealer world?
Well, first, I think I do have a very unique background in comparison to others in this industry or my peers in the association realm. Being 20 years within the association, I had to do a self-assessment, right? And look at where do I want to do my next 20 or my next 30? And at that point in time, I had to look myself in the mirror and say, you know what? I think I've done a pretty good job with NAMAD, and NAMAD's been good to me. I think I've been a contributor to this industry, not just in the diversity side, but also within globally this industry and at all levels. And I wanted to see if it was possible for me to look at being an entrepreneur, similar to my fellow NAMAD members and who we also advocate for. So it is definitely an interesting journey. It took me quite a bit of time to get my first store. And so I went through NADA Academy. I've done everything that I think from a standpoint of, if you look at tiers or tracks, I've done all of those tiers and tracks and just getting my first opportunity and thankfully and prayerfully that Nissan and the previous owner of Nissan of Bowie allowed me to acquire the store.
Can I key in on something here? You said, where do I want to spend the next 20, 30? This is a stark contrast, I feel like, a narrative of what we tend to hear very vocally online, which is like, save your dealership and things are, brace for impact, right? But you, with your experience as a CPA and the work that you've done in nonprofits and setting up and tax advice and all of the things you've done over the years, right? Both at home and abroad. This tells me there's hope. This tells me you've seen something, because you're not just the kind of guy that's like, I don't want to own a dealership. So what were some of the things you were looking at that said, hey, signal to self, there is a 20, 30 year trajectory here?
Oh, just knowing this industry, it's the best. I've said this a couple of times. It is the best kept industry out there. And it's just a variety of opportunities, whether it's at the OEM level, manufacturing, at the retail level. It encompasses everything that's American within in the auto industry. And so I look at this as it's not going away. It's evolving. It has evolved. If you look at history, particularly when I started, it's evolved. It's evolved from the standpoint of dealer body from 30,000 plus to 18,000 now, or 17,000 now. And so there's an opportunity of growth. There's an opportunity here where you can make a difference in your community. I am a giver at heart. And so this, and being on the entrepreneurial side, kind of also fits my personality and lets me be me at a different level. Versus being an association president, and also an advocate for the industry and advocate for increasing minority dealer body. So it has helped me grow as an individual. But the auto industry is not going away. Cars are still out here on the road, and although it's going to look different, we just need to be able to adapt and change. And not too many people really wanting to do that now, as change is hard. And so I see a huge uptick in it.
You keep saying this word, becoming an entrepreneur, and I don't know if you recognize how key that is, in my opinion, because, when you think about going into owning a dealership, especially for you, it wasn't blue sky. It was a dealership that's been there for a hot minute, right? Like going into your everyday, thinking of yourself as a consistent entrepreneur and not just like a business owner, which are two approaches that are wildly different, in my opinion. Maybe talk a little bit about that, how that being framed up in your mind as being an entrepreneur when you're in the dealership every day, especially with, like, you've had this backstory of NAMAD, right? And knowing the dealership world and knowing what the legacy of the franchise retail automotive side, and even seeing the shifts in like the move to digital, but that you're approaching now with an entrepreneur's mindset in your business. And I'm guessing you do that consistently in NAMAD as well. What does the approach of an entrepreneur from a business mindset look like differently from maybe just being a business owner?
I would say for NAMAD, my role as president, I'm responsible for fundraising. I'm responsible for day-to-day operations. I'm responsible for everything, kind of sort of like an entrepreneur would be for his or her day-to-day business. The difference is that, I don't own it. And if I look at, Michael, you mentioned the next 20, 30, 40 years, I don't have anything to pass NAMAT. I can't pass NAMAT on to my kids or my family. And so those are like some of those things you got to look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, do I want to roll and be comfortable? Do I want to roll and be taking a chance and being able to affect change similar to I've been able to affect change on the association side, but at the same time, NAMAD will continually go, whether I'm in this chair or not. But I need to make sure I have a seat at my own table and being able to feed others off of that table and also see how can I grow. And it's been a challenge. It is a challenge. It's definitely a mindset shift from in comparison to being the association head to an actually active owner. It is definitely different, Kyle, because man, day-to-day NAMAD is one paradigm, but day-to-day at a car dealership is a whole nother level of stuff. And so it all both surround people, both deal with relationships and trying to make sure people are comfortable and okay, particularly your staff. I went from a staff of 3 at NAMAD to a staff of 70. So it's definitely different in being able to rely and trust your managers. It has been my first 60, 90 days were probably tough for me to adjust and adapt to it. But ultimately, I'm growing and I learn from my people and I'm able to make all of the things that I've learned from all of my great dealers, particularly our board, who I've been able to be around with through NAMAD throughout the years, all of this sponge stuff that I've had in my brain that I can kind of like spill out now. And so that's the cool thing is because people look like, hey, you haven't been in the industry, but yeah, I have. I just haven't been on that side. So
Kyle, just so you know, before you popped on, I was like, hey man, Damon, what's it like, man, stepping into the store? And we've been talking a lot about entrepreneurship, and he used the synonym for roller coaster, which is it's been interesting. It's like every entrepreneur to describe the roller coaster of entrepreneurship. It's been interesting.
Yeah, it's either interesting or there's this like word form that there's this like audio form that you make with the word great. It's like it's been great. Right?
The falsetto.
It just kind of does a little loop right there.
Hey, I would tell you that my name may have some weight somewhere in this industry, but boy, during this transition on acquiring this store, it was like mud because it did not matter. So I definitely got a feeling. I definitely got a feeling of what dealers go through from transitioning vendors and banks and things. And I had to like humble myself. It's like, hey, you know me though, right? And then I'm like, nah, they don't know me as an entrepreneur. They just know me as, this guy that speaks all the time.
They're like, but you're CIT though.
Right.
Just over here, just letting you know. That's amazing. That's amazing.
So that was like, you definitely got to come in here humble. And a lot of people, I think, don't come in with the humility or the gratitude of appreciating this opportunity, right? This is a finite number of people that really are blessed to have this opportunity. And so I take heed to it, and I'm thankful of being in the store and working with my folks every day and working with NAMAD too. And so it's been a balancing act with 2 jobs, but I've been handling it pretty well.
Yeah, when you look at, for me, the number 17,000 can be a really big or a really small number. And when you look at, 17,000 franchise retail dealers plus or minus, and especially recognizing that a large swath of those are owned by a larger conglomerates with all of the consolidation that's happening, you're really talking somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 13,000 probably single rooftop owners in the entire US that your name is a part of at this point. And I'd love to kind of get to in the day that we recorded this, We've got an article came out in Auto News speaking to just how many of those owners, operators are in the minority, right? Whether it be African American or American Asian, or there's a Hispanic, few different nationalities and cultures represented in that article. But at this point, I think we're talking about just under 1,400. Is that right? Yeah. Minority owners in the U.S. in the spectrum of that 17,000.
Yeah, so the 1,300 plus rooftops, okay, are out of 18,000 rooftops, and so within the minority dealer body, there's also a finite, even more of a finite number of individual owners. Average minority dealer owns 2 stores, 2.5, 3 stores, and just to be a part of that is huge, right? And it means something. It has some value to it. But it also is sad to say that you have to put that word only in front, right? There's not a parity number that we say, oh, there's 17,000 and then there's 16,000 of this. And so, we have to, as an industry, continue to do a better job with working at increasing the dealer portfolio. But when you look at from African American dealers, it's 280, 290, I believe, in 2021. I'm part of that number.
Wow.
Right.
Yep.
And I broke it. I think I'm like 267, 268 from when I got my store last year, which means something, right? That number means something to me. And I think it means something to Nissan, as there was a net 5 or 6 of us African American dealers that came in under Nissan, and of which 3 or 4 of us were our first stores.
Wow.
We've never had our store. And so, the article didn't speak to that, because I did talk about it extensively, that, they took a chance on 4 or 5 new people that are hitting home runs because they took a chance. And, I'm forever grateful and indebted to Nissan as a sponsor and supporter of the association for all these years and relationships I've garnered on that side. Then just to look at how we've been able to evolve our store at Bowie and being able to gain the momentum that we are doing at the store. And so it's a trust factor. And I give kudos to that, because I think it's so easy for people to go to the least point resistance. And that's, if you got a store, we're going to give you 12 more.
Yeah.
And then you hear the term, you're our guy. And so it kind of starts to happen like that. But to take a chance, it's hard for someone to get their first one. And Kyle, whether you're minority or non, whether you're a large dealership group, everyone started off with one. When you really break down on it, most of our successful dealers, non-minority dealers, they start off with one, and then it grows. And so, I'm a new bud that's starting to sprout, and there's other gals and ladies that are starting to sprout, and hopefully we'll be able to bring along new buds in the pipeline.
One of the things I love that you bring up in the article is, and being able to contrast that to what you're saying now, is yes, largest net increase in minority owned dealerships since 2006. However, we can do better, but also with the hope of, but we all started with one. There's an opportunity here. And you had noted in the article, I think it said something to the effect of how this is the first time that automakers are really like openly to the public stating their intentions that they want to help grow minority owned dealerships. But then you also say later on, hey, if you want to get into this, you can't cherry pick the opportunity. Can you maybe bring us into what you mean by that and what your advice might be for potential minority owned dealers looking to get into the game?
Yeah. Look, I've tried 15 other times, and the excuses of, you don't have the experience, you don't have the money, there's somebody else that has better, they got better land. What's another one? Your management team's not right. How can you move from one area to be another owner in another store where you don't know anyone, blah, 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 blah. So
woke up on the wrong side of the bed.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, just everything under the sun,
you hear all of that, but it never comes down to, can you do it? Right? Can you do it? So we hear those excuses. I would say non-minorities hear it as well, but we hear those rational reasonings all the time. Money plays a key, and cash rules everything around you, right? And that is definitely true. But if given opportunity, we'll figure it out. And we try to work towards figuring it out.
Yeah, well, that's the entrepreneurial spirit that you're talking about.
It's not an entrepreneur who said that they got a lot of letter of intent that said no because they couldn't figure it out.
Right.
Right. So I had to figure it out, no different than my peers had to figure it out. So there is definitely a difference, and you see there's some ebbs and flows with all points, particularly stores that get ground up, that you never built the store from ground up, or you've never been a luxury dealer before. But what about the guy who was a domestic dealer? That there's the Mercedes guy never became a Mercedes guy because he was a Mercedes guy.
Right. Yeah, it's like you woke up one day and you have 5 Mercedes stores that were doing 100 cars each, right? That's just not the story.
It don't work that way, right? So you start off with one, and that one started because the way you treat the customer, your belief, and how you envision your store operating. And so it doesn't matter. It matters on the person that's leading the ship. And so I think there has to be some patient capital. There has to be some patient opportunities. The store that I have or I own is in my neighborhood. I live 3 miles away. NAMAD's 3 miles away. So I have a footprint here. No one at the level of locally, but more so nationally through NAMAD, of course. But I know the people in this area. I know how people have been historically treated in this area by way of how they've been purchasing cars. And so I know I can make a difference by changing that paradigm for what I believe in. And it's working, it's changing. It's not as fast, of course, as I want it to be, but we're making some footprints and trying to lead the way.
Well, what I love about that is that you're saying that there are, because you've got this kind of like national and local thing happening at the same time of shifting a paradigm, right? Whether that be, I think like when I talk to you, it's shifting the paradigm locally. It's shifting the paradigm nationally for minority dealers, but you're also working very, very hard at shifting the paradigm for dealers, period. Not just minority dealers. Like you have a full scope, like mentality and initiative with the dealer network. And I think that, I'll say this, like a lot of these conversations are in this build up to a SoduCon here in just a couple months. And the idea is that, whether you're working just on your dealer or dealer group, or caring about the national level dealership network and anything in between, state association, minority dealers, anything like that, this intentionality of people first is extremely important, right? And I mean, you said it, the first thing you said was, it's how you take care of your people, which I think, employees and customers alike, in order to shift the paradigm, right? Because it needs a paradigm shift.
And it's we've seen it with disruptors, with the disruptors that entered in our industry. We're seeing it today, how digital is directing the way of pricing. The whole platform, or how dealers and dealerships have historically operated, has changed. Mm-hmm. And it's changed because some weren't paying attention. We took for granted the model, and we didn't listen to those who had issues, grievances, or whatever the case may be of the experience. There's a lack of trust between consumer and purchaser within our industry. And we have to do a better job as an industry to bring that buffer of trust to the consumer. And trust comes with transparency, trust comes with communication. But overall, we have to lead with some empathy and some gratitude. And those things we've been able to shift the culture with our store pretty well with it by doing and embracing those two things. And I tell our folks at the store, just put yourself in someone else's shoes. You're a purchaser as well, consumer. Do you want your whatever grandmother to feel like this, or whoever your significant other? And once you get people like, okay, you start to see that change or that shift in attitude. Because if you work in it, you take it for granted.
I'm connecting some dots here, Damon. And the dots I'm connecting are, you live in the neighborhood of your store, 3 miles out. You've talked about shifting the paradigm. You brought up disruptors. I'm starting to think we will never see Damon dressed up like a pickle saying, my doctor has told me to turn it down so my heart doesn't explode.
No.
Because then you have to see those people at your PTA meetings and
man.
This is a bit of an inside joke. I watched one of Damon's presentations where he shows some commercials where there's like 5 or 6 car dealer commercials where they're all dressed up like pickles, saying the exact same thing, maybe a different setting, hospital bed. My doctor said I got to turn it down. But now I'm like, he's never going to do this because he has to see all these people. He operates where he lives.
And I don't want to be in the front. I don't think I want to be. My people or my peers at the store, they are the ones that do the day-to-day on their particular departments. And so, I don't go out and do the check thing and here's me and taking a picture with someone, giving out a turkey or some. I don't do that. It's okay for people that do it. I just believe in, if we're going to support you. Here's the why. I know the why. And my salesperson or my manager will either be present to assist. And if I need to come, I do come when I can. But, it's not really about me, right? I told my staff the other day that who pays them is not me, it's the customer. I'm just the middleman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You're just the pass-through. Right?
I'm just the pass-through. And so you need to look at them and be holding to them, not to me.
Yeah.
Because they can go, there's 35 other Nissan stores over in my area. They don't have to come to our store. So I look at it from that lens of gratitude, because we want people to come back, and they come back because they trust you.
It's good. Well, man, we're going to wrap this conversation up, but I've got 2 things. One, I'm really excited that you're going to be at a SoduCon and talking and probably getting maybe a little bit more intense than anyone would see over a podcast, because I know how you roll. But also at least from my perspective, NAMAD is the best kept secret in automotive right now. So, for minority dealers or even non-dealers that might aspire to that, or those not in minority circles, what does it look like to connect? What's the best way to connect, and why would someone connect with NAMAD as an organization?
So NAMAD, our website, thanks for the plug, www.namad.org. We advocate for dealers, existing dealers. We advocate for individuals that aspire to become a dealer. We advocate for people who are interested in wanting to become a dealer, learning about this industry in all aspects. We also work with every OEM in their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And that's at the retail side, that's at the supplier diversity side, and it's also within employment. And so we've been able to foster our relationships of trust with our OEM partners and have some candid dialogue with them. But ultimately, NAMAD is the incubator to give hope. that you can get an opportunity. There's a platform here that will advocate for you. Now, I've helped a lot of non-minority dealers versus my own peers within the dealer group. And so I think that's also like a kind of a welcoming thing, that people feel comfortable that it's just not this minority group or me only supporting minority people, that I've helped everybody. And so it has definitely been an incubator to provide access and opportunity to a lot of people. And we just,
well, I'll tell you this, that's absolutely true, because I'm sitting, Cirillo, not a joke. I'm sitting there with Damon eating a steak at dinner one night, and he looks over at the table at me, and actually Paul and I are sitting there, right? And he goes, "You guys should own a store." Yeah, we're going to figure that out. I'll take care of that. We're going to figure that out. Right. So maybe one day I'll take you up on that. But oh man, Damon, thanks for coming on with us. Can't wait to see you at a SodaCon. Appreciate the conversation and for just the way that you approach and advocate for our entire industry. It's an encouragement to me. So thanks, man.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity. Good seeing you, Michael. And hey, at SodaCon, we're going to have a good time.
Okay, so there were a few things that stood out to me from this conversation with Damon. First, actually, I thought this was really interesting, especially in the sea of people who are kind of pushing themselves out front, whether it's through personal branding or whatnot. He was like, I'm perfectly okay being behind the scenes, right? Like right. I'm totally okay being an operator and making sure that my people have the ecosystem and the environment that they can thrive in. I don't know what your take on that, Kyle and Paul, is. Just I thought that was really tremendous that he has so much clarity. That. Yeah, like just clarity. This is where I fit.
At NAMED last year, I learned a few things about Damon and him putting on the NAMED conference. Number one, he really knows how to put on an amazing conference, and NAMED is one of the best kept secrets in automotive. Number two, when Little John was at the club on the stage that Damon arranged, that he talks about like they're just buddies. Damon's like just hanging out there in the shadows. So you have like the whole DJ and their crew, and Damon's just back there, standing back from the front, just kind of looking around and just enjoying the fact that everyone's enjoying themselves. Right. And number three, Damon never stays at the hotel that the event's being held at.
Oh,
wow.
What?
Yeah.
Just because he just needs a different space.
He's like, I'll never be able to get to sleep because I'll spend so much time. I can't say no, and I want to be. So he really does want to focus on other people doing the thing. He takes a ton of pride in that. So I can see that played out in like regular observation in his life.
Well, and just in NAMED, right? You know, there's this. I'm on a clubhouse room, and he's like, "Yep, I was on the phone with the FTC yesterday." You know, and it's like, "Oh wow, you're doing like you're putting in the work for the auto industry that it needs, and you're not like." There's no social media post that's like, guess what? I was on with the FTC yesterday. Right. But for NAMED, he understands that. And I loved this. He was like, no, I'm advocating not just for minority dealers. I'm even advocating for all dealers. He's very clear about that. And then even just, I loved the grace that he had about, hey, look, I'm in the community. I am a part of the community. I know my community. I know the way they've been treated, and I know that the way they should be treated. So that allows me to serve them in the dealership by orchestrating what we do as a store to be right for the people. So he's just like, he's kind of that, hey, I'm just going to make sure everyone's got what they need. And that goes like from a dealer perspective and his role with NAMED, and to a consumer and employee perspective and his role in the store. And and also he's just one of the funniest people I've ever met. So
he is like super sleeper, like incredibly funny. Like I can't remember a call I've been on with him where I didn't end up laughing really hard. And he's just like a 12-year-old when he laughs, right? I feel like he's got like bottle rockets in his desk. He's like that kind of like, he kind of comes out like this. He does. Face all gets crunchy. I love it.
Not to mention, as we were winding down, Kyle brought up Bugatti scooters. What was the word you had for it?
The Scugatti.
The Scugatti. And here the three of us find ourselves looking online. We're all like a bunch of giddy little kids. We're just like, ooh, a Scugatti. It was so fun. Such a great guy.
We were thinking, like, can we get Scugattis at a SodaCon, like that we can transport back and forth? That would be really dangerous, but it seems on brand for us.
That's awesome.
Well, man, we had so much fun hanging out with Damon. And for Paul J. Daly, Michael Cirillo, and myself, Kyle Mountsier, thank you for hanging out with us on Auto Collabs. Make sure and subscribe to the podcast, share it out, drop us a comment if you loved what we talked about, encourage Damon as well, and we will see you next time.
Welcome to Auto Collabs.
Why are we recording?